Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right, guys, we're back. And I have one of your favorite shows. As you see, I'm joined by the one and only Robert L. Herbage, and this show is called Hanging with Herbage. Welcome back, Mr. Herbage.
Glad to be back.
One more time. I didn't get you on that. One more time.
I said, glad to be back.
Cool. So if you guys haven't seen our show before, Mr. Herbage has so many stories, so much information about the restaurant industry, what it takes to build one, what it takes with that pace, and what is needed at the last minute. He shared with us so many different stories where you're like, how is this guy still alive? I mean, how is he not have high blood pressure? And because at the last minute, he'll have to change everything and, get back on track with a million people down his neck because he's responsible for everything. And you told me, Mr. Herbage, that some younger people just coming up, they can't handle that because they don't know what they're in for.
They really don't. They don't really have a clue how bad it's going to be. Yeah, it's fun to watch them sort of melt down. You kind of hold their hands. It's like, it'll be fine.
Do you remember your first one?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we were working late all night long. I mean, it was crunch time, and luckily my boss kept us all plied with lots of pizza and lots of sodas. He was going around like a waitress, making sure everybody was happy while they were, up to their elbows in drawings, getting everything done. Yeah.
Well, can you tell me before we get started on today, because we're going to be talking a little more about Thanksgiving, and there's a lot of questions I have, and I'm sure you do too. You guys can always call in 631-730-7376 or use instant feedback. And since I'm blind and I can't see that computer, Mr. Producer will read it, and he'll read it on the air. Mr. Herbage will respond to it, and just give me your name, where you're from. If you're bashful, just say anonymous, and we'll get your questions on the air that way. But Mr. Herbage, can you tell the audience, in case they never heard your show before, about the Hospitality Design Group and when it was founded, what it is, and what it does?
We're an architectural design firm that specializes in restaurants, and we're located here in San Antonio, originally from Southern California. We've done projects all across the country, including Hawaii. And they range from small little projects to very large destination type projects and anything in between.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, we talked last week about Thanksgiving.
Right.
And I asked you a million questions about, does it pay to stay open? What really happens on Thanksgiving? But I thought it's really interesting to know from an expert in the restaurant industry, what happens those days after when everyone's got a refrigerator full of turkey sandwiches and maybe they get turkeyed out? Do they go out? Can you shed some light on this time of year?
This part of the time of year, everybody's gearing up for the holidays, obviously, and we're in the first wave. And so all the design firms are working pretty diligently to get all these projects completed, and you're also working up against a time frame that's superimposed to you by the local jurisdictions, like the cities and the counties and all that kind of stuff. Here in Texas, they take off the day after Thanksgiving, so you only got 3 days for the week to get either inspections or get things into the city. Come Christmas, the holidays between Christmas and New Year's, they take the whole week off. And so, and then the poor city people, they play catch up after the first of the year because they get punished for the week that they took off, and they're basically under snow. So, they're catching up terribly. And everybody associated with the construction industry is pretty much doing the same thing.
Now, Robert, is it a good idea or a bad idea, or is it something that you normally don't even do, but to schedule a project that's going to overlap the holidays, is that a good or bad thing to do?
It's a good thing to a degree. It gives you some quiet time where you can sort of kind of play a little catch up. in the office, we could play a little catch up. I thought we were going to play catch up for the 4 days that we were off, but
Mhm.
we only got to catch up on one of the days.
Because you're working on something right
Um,
now, aren't you?
oh yeah, I was working until midnight a couple nights to try to get a couple different projects off center. Um, but when construction wise, I mean, the other part of it here in South Texas is a lot of folks that are from Mexico that are up here working, have family in Mexico. They'll go home for a week. And so a lot of the crews have difficulty keeping their staff activated because they're losing people,
Mhm.
for the Christmas holidays, because it's a big issue where they'll go home and then they'll come back after the first of the year. So a lot of folks, and then you've got the crunch because we're having a heck of a time trying to get materials and get
Oh
equipment,
yeah. Wow.
and it's still stretching out. So we just had a group conversation with one of our big accounts, and they brought up the fact, it was Jack in the Box, and they brought up the fact it's like, okay, we have all these projects that we're trying to get into construction. Keep in mind that we're not going to be able to get fryers and walk-in boxes, for long periods of time, and it's going to affect the construction schedule on just about anything that's coming down the pike
Because
on
they're on
any
the Long
restaurant
Beach
chain.
port, right? That they're
They're
all,
sitting in Long Beach in the
yeah.
port.
Yep.
It's
I
exactly
used to I
right.
used to live there, and it's crazy to think how much is out there just sitting there.
Oh, grew up in Long Beach, went back there in June, June or July, and you could see them all parked right off the front of the ocean view where they
Yep.
normally have the race and stuff. It looked like a D-Day landing out there. All these big container ships just sitting there waiting.
Yeah. And you know how I found out the first time about what was happening? It wasn't from the news. It was 2 weeks before the news, and you told me.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of scary when you fly out of Long Beach and they make a left-hand turn and you go over the port of LA and the port of Long Beach, and you're looking down and there is nothing parked in the port. Everything is sitting out there, you know, out there and there's just a ton of ships. I think the last count was like 100 of them sitting
And
out
it's
there,
miles.
miles.
And are there produce out there? Are there?
I
Uh,
would imagine there's a little bit of everything out there.
yeah, yeah. That's
So if you're
crazy.
short on your TV, you know where it's sitting.
Yeah, if you could swim,
Yeah,
you
if you can
swim
swim,
a
you can go
lot.
get it.
Well, um, Robert, tell me, when it seems to me that your hands are tied. I mean, have you hit that yet with this project you're working on? Like, hey, I'm ready. We're ready to do this, but I'm not Aquaman. I can't go get this stuff.
No, you end up spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to work around it.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like, well, let me get this part done and we can be working on this while we're waiting for that. Um, and you end up spending, 20 questions trying to figure out how to kind of get around the issue. So you're still making it, may be baby steps, but you're still making progress. And it just gets, I mean, I just feel sorry for the people that have the big pieces that they're dealing with, like exhaust hoods,
Yeah.
anything right now that is made out of stainless steel, they can't get it, or the lead time on it is so much. And then what's even worse, the prices have just gone through the roof because they can't get the sheet metal at a decent price. So it's gone up almost 4 times.
Jeez.
You've been in restaurants and you see that sheet of stainless steel underneath the hood behind the kitchen equipment.
Hmm.
It normally is, I think it used to be like $300 a sheet. And now it's something like 800 or 900 for
Jesus.
that same sheet. And somebody's going to pay for that.
Yeah. And Robert, I never thought about asking you this, but when you talk about fuel and how expensive gas is, I assume it's kind
Right.
of trickled down because the kitchen is usually run by what, gas?
Right.
Is
Yeah.
that par for the course, or?
That hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure it's coming because they were talking about. I mean, there's a lot of LP gas that's available, but the natural gas, I mean, there's pipes everywhere around here for that kind of stuff. But I haven't seen any inflation on that kind of a deal. But I would imagine if you remember back when, gosh, it might have been 5 or 6 years ago, there was some sort of a crunch going on. I think it might have been when when gas started hitting $5 a gallon.
2008
Yeah.
in California, it was up to $6. I
And
remember.
they started putting a gas premium on anything being shipped, and they never took it off.
What's Can you explain what that is?
Well, when you had FedEx delivering to you, there was a little bump that they put on there
Oh.
for the extra cost of the fuel. And they never kind of ever took that away.
And
That
then
I ever remember it.
didn't we as far as that goes, um didn't that always go on after that? I mean, they never stopped doing it.
They never stopped doing it. It's just, everybody, it's built in now. But yeah, it's still there. There is a premium for the fuel cost. And I would imagine now that fuel is climbing up again, I'm sure that you're gonna start seeing it, and it's a pass down. So, nobody basically eats anything, so they just pass it down to the customer in some shape or
Wow.
form.
Wow.
And the difficulty is in some of these folks that run the restaurants, some of them are really struggling. I heard one gentleman tell me one time that there were certain things that they could count on when they're doing what they call their food cost, and they can monitor and make sure their prices are in line with what they're paying for the supplies. He goes, but there are certain things that are just moving up and down constantly. And he goes, you can't forecast it anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it was a Chinese restaurant where they had a big buffet, and you can imagine how much product they're running through those big giant buffets.
Yeah. I mean, and how does it affect you when I was in the supermarket the other day and I saw $9.99 for a thing of bacon?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, do you guys, because you buy in such bulk, does it not affect you guys as much as, regular Joe?
Well, what I noticed is that the Restaurant News, which is a trade magazine for all the restaurants, they started having a little newsletter piece where they started telling you what the prices were for eggs and meat and vegetables and on and on and on. That where it's kind of coming into, because evidently it was like the stock market. It
Mm,
was rising and falling constantly, and that's been going on for quite a while now.
wow. Mr. Producer, you got some of my friend's fans, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Yes, we have Vori from Georgia,
Hey, boy.
and he wrote, "Why is stainless steel demand becoming greater?"
Um, Primarily because the product is all coming from the East. It's coming out of China. And so it's probably sitting in Long Beach. But that's kind of what the problem is. They can't get the material. Same thing with roofing insulation. The roof is not a problem, but it sits on an insulated board on top of a roof. They cannot get those boards because, again, they're fabricated offshore.
Yeah.
And so it's bogging down a lot of things.
Yeah. I don't get in any political thing here or whatever,
Uh-uh.
but for the first time in my life, I didn't even know that the United States could be self-sufficient when it came to energy, but
Yeah.
apparently we were.
Uh-uh.
And then with a stroke of a pen, it goes away.
It goes away.
And who's got to pay for it? You, me, Mr. Producer. It just doesn't make any sense. Let's go to another question before I get off my soapbox.
We have Celine from Delaware, and she wrote, "Robert, what is your favorite type of food? You seem like an Italian guy that loves to go out."
I'm guessing Italian.
Yeah, I love Italian. Yeah. Yep. I love Italian. It's got a little bit of everything.
Nice. I like
Yeah.
that. Getting to know Herbage. That should be
There
a show.
you go.
Getting to know Herbage. That should be a good one. What else you got, Mr. Producer?
Balto from Quebec, they wrote in, "Excuse my English, but do you work with people outside of the U.S.?"
We have. We've worked with folks in Japan. We've worked with folks in Mexico and South America. We've worked with designers even up in Canada.
You've done
Uh,
in Canada. You've done it. In
Yeah,
Canada.
we've done work up in there.
Okay.
The interesting thing was we were doing some work with with the Japanese firm. And in when you draw things, and this time we were drawing everything by hand, you kind of, if you're having a shutter on a window, you kind of vignette it. You only show a portion of the shutter, because you want to show the wall behind it or the window behind it. Well, my partner at the time went over to Japan, and he was walking the restaurant, and this little gentleman came up to him, and he was showing him his shutter, and he had built it exactly like he drew it with the little vignette. And you can imagine all the little blades just kind of sitting out there in the middle of nowhere. And he was very proud of it. And Mark had is like, oh, I hate to break it to you, pal.
Oh no.
You need
That's
to make the other half of it.
Right. Well, Mr. Producer, I got time for one more.
Yes.
Okay.
We have Lenny from Texas.
Lenny.
For
Hey, Lenny.
for people trying to build an all-you-can-eat Southern restaurant, how can someone minimize the foodborne illnesses that are inevitable to arrive?
Oh, good question.
A lot of it is just making sure everything is cooked to the correct temperatures to take care of it. And then everything as far as sanitation to keep from cross contamination. Remember that between the chicken and the vegetable kind of stuff.
Right.
They're cleaning constantly and making sure all that stuff is taken care of. And, you just have to be hyper vigilant about your cleanliness inside the kitchen,
Okay.
more so than you used to.
Gotcha. All right. We got Mr. Producer. We got one more.
Yes, we have Tammy from Alabama.
Hey, Tammy.
What are your thoughts on a restaurant that specializes on holiday festivities all year round, where the food and the decor of the restaurant match holidays?
You probably remember this, Casey. In Southern California, there used to be that steakhouse that had the roof that looked like it was under snow. I can't, and it was a big steakhouse, but it looked like you were in a log cabin kind of environment, where everything was covered, like the roof was just like 10
I
inches
think
deep,
I'm remembering something. Was it
Yeah.
on 995?
Something like that. And it looked like it
Irvine?
was, like Christmas time in, up in Canada. But it had that sort of holiday theme year round. It was great.
Wow. Yeah.
They used to have
I
the
got
peanuts on the floor.
Oh, there used to be a ground round around here that used to do that. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
that place, but
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something. Like, on my bucket list, there's a place I always wanted to go to. There was a bunch of them out in California. There's one within 15 miles in New York here, but it's called the Brazilian Steakhouse.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked with one of those? And these are high-end cuts of meat.
Right.
And I want to know if that price point, do people make money doing that, or do they make money on drinks? Because they're serving the best meat there, and you can have as much as you want of it.
Yeah. I've never done one of those.
You never been to one?
No, I've been to one, but a friend
Oh.
of mine used to do them. And yeah, I mean, they bring out all of the fine cuts, and I mean, there's things on skewers, there's stuff that's like gyroed stuff. I mean, there's just a number of things, and everybody that has ever eaten there just raves about how wonderful it is. And you're right, it's an experience, so it's a little bit more expensive, but man, my God, I mean, they really, I guess it's either Argentina or Brazilian.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean, it's something else to go to, because there's just a show going on at your table.
Yeah. Have you ever worked or built an all-you-can-eat place? And do you know anything about it?
Yeah, I always wondered, especially we did a big 10,000 square foot buffet. And it was buffet from hell. You just had every station, everything you can imagine under the sun. And I kept thinking, it's like, my God, some of the stuff you got to toss it at the end of the day, because not everybody's going to eat all this stuff. But then you see, some folks show that, I mean, the whole families come in, you'd think that they were going to eat for a month, because it's all you can eat. It's amazing.
But on most people, do you think that they're making a couple bucks? But then once so often, you'll get a rugby team or a football team or a couple members of just some real big dudes that come in there
Yeah.
and clean out the bank. But for the most part, John, Jane, Q Public, are they going to have one portion or are they going to go back maybe once? What's your experience in that?
Well, it was like my daughter. She'd load up with Jello,
Yeah.
but they've got it down to a science to where they get the proper cost of cut of meat, to where they can make the different dishes and they can do everything with the vegetables and all the other items. They've got it down to a science because I mean that is their basically bread and butter. So they know exactly how far they can push it. And I'm
Mm.
sure that there's certain things that they can blend into some other sort of dish the second day, so they're not really utilizing or losing it. But no, they've got their stuff together when it comes time to figure out how to make that thing work. Because there's a lot of, especially the Chinese buffets. And they're huge.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's one thing. I hope it's not too off top, but if anyone knew, it's you. And I wanted to ask. Uh, this is a few years ago. KFC came out with a boneless breast of chicken,
Right.
and it was delicious. Um, my question, I guess, is was this chicken, and how would that? How could you do something like that? How could you? For lack of anything, I'm asking you because I don't know who else to ask.
Every time I think about boneless chicken, I think of that Gary Larson cartoon
What was
of the
that?
boneless the boneless chicken farm, and there's just all
Oh,
these
and
chickens
it's
laid out.
got-
They got no bones.
just a beak, right? No mouth.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, obviously they've figured out a way. Tyson is a big player in that market.
Do they
Um,
supply KFC, Tyson?
They probably do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing when you go into we did a Kentucky Fried Chicken a number of years ago and created a prototype for them. And they've got, creating that chicken down to a science to where they have these huge fryers to where they can cook, like 100 chickens all at once to make all the pieces and parts and
Wow.
on and on and on. I mean, it's basically a giant assembly line,
Mm.
because at that time, they were putting everything still out in the buckets. And that was a lot of chicken.
Yeah, right. So basically, to piggyback on that question is these fads and these flash in the pan things to make rib, but sometimes you see it come back. I mean, do these things? Have you seen any of them actually work?
Well, the thing that's taking off right now, and we experienced it at Thanksgiving, we always had a big turkey at Thanksgiving. Well, most of my kids and even my grandkids are vegetarian now. So it's like, besides myself and my wife, there's nobody eating chicken. So all of a sudden the chicken came down to where it looked like a fillet, because it was a chicken breast. And everything now is gone to plant-based meals. They're even coming up with plant-based hamburgers, that one particular hamburger that Burger King uses. And it's become very popular, and you couldn't tell the difference taste wise, but it's all plant-based. So there's a lot of things that are changing right now, and people are changing their diets. So some of the things that we were traditionally used to doing, they're kind of, the menu is beginning to kind of shift, is what we're seeing.
How long do you think Starbucks will be able to sell you a $9 cup of coffee?
Oh, well, but they're not selling coffee. They're selling an experience.
I,
And that
that
is
would
the
be what-
truth. That's what they tell you. We're not selling coffee. We're selling an experience. And they want you to hang out in Starbucks. I mean, if you
Oh,
remember
with the
back about 10 years
Wi-Fi.
ago, everybody and their brother was sitting in those soft chairs, making the next screenplay, drinking coffee.
And making sure that you saw that they were doing that.
Exactly. So that's the experience.
I see
And
what
so
you
it's
mean.
worth the $5 buck, coffee.
Yeah, I got you. All right, it makes sense. You always know the answers. So we're almost out of time here, but can we end with one more, Mr. Producer?
Yes.
Okay.
Billy from Florida, they ask a really good question. Have you ever stopped someone from creating a restaurant that you knew would fail?
Oh, great question.
And if so, why?
Um, you can sort of see the handwriting on the wall. And this person is, for lack of a better phrase, hell-bent on going forward on something that is not going to really work. And in the back of your mind, you don't want to really rain on their parade. And sure enough, they're into it for 6 months, and then you go over there and it's a dry cleaners in. But yeah, no, there are people that come up with some very strange concepts, and they're very enthusiastic about it. And their enthusiasm is trying to convince everybody that this is going to be the next great thing, and it falls flat. And all you can do is do your job as best you can.
Right.
And pray that they're right and not wrong, but your gut is telling it there's no way this is
I've
gonna
kind of
work.
done this thing a little bit before, so I might know what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
you would, I know you do your best, and for anybody, but it's just people need to listen to people who have been there before. I know it's hard sometimes, but anyway, hey, Hanging with Herbage, another great show. Robert L. Herbage, tell people where they can get a hold of you. Anything you want to leave us with. Another great show. Thank you.
Well, and I enjoy it too. And I love all the comments and questions. You can reach us through our website at hospitalitydesigngroup.com. And on there is our contact information, both our phone numbers, our email addresses to get a hold of us. You can stop by if you happen to be in the great city of San Antonio by the Alamo. We're here. And we're always accessible for anybody who has any questions regarding the restaurant industry.
Nice. San Antonio, I believe that's where my friend Joe Rogan moved to, I believe.
I
if
think
I'm not
so
mistaken.
too.
Yeah, he's great. He's awesome. But hey, for Robert L. Herbage, I thank you again. Thank you for everyone who wrote in, and I can't wait to hear what you got to say next, buddy. That's Hanging with Herbage. We'll be right back.
Good seeing you again.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.